From KPRC2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Good morning and welcome to Houston Newsmakers and welcome to Texas Senator John Cornyn. It's been too long since we've been face to face.
Good to see you.
I'm glad to see you. You've been able to squeeze us into your schedule back home in Texas. Got a lot to talk about. I want to get to that. Good news is what we're going to start with. The bipartisan package that you just recently talked about, the passage of the CHIPS Act, which I know you took the Senate floor to praise that bill this week. We got pictures of you doing that. 64-33, that's true bipartisan, unlike sometimes when they say bipartisan and one guy stepped over the line.
Right.
That really is. We're talking about billions of dollars for semiconductors. We're going to make a difference in this country.
Yeah, I've had to learn a lot about semiconductors in the last couple of years since I filed this, but COVID revealed a lot of vulnerable supply chains in this country, stuff that was made overseas that we didn't get access to, particularly during the pandemic. And when I learned that 90% of all of the semiconductors, which run everything from your cell phone to the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, were made in Asia and might possibly not be available to us if there were a pandemic or natural disaster or maybe even a military conflict, it would be an existential threat to our economy and our national security. So I worked with Mark Warner, the senator from Virginia, a Democrat, and 2 years ago we filed the bill and we finally got it done this week.
Takes a time, but sometimes it just simmers on the pot for a little bit and it gets done. You talked about Asia and the semiconductors that might be at play. China has also been playing a big part in chip manufacturing, and it seems to me that because of the number of chips manufactured there, and now there's another big reason to focus on China with what's going on with Taiwan. That's elevated. Now, your thoughts about the potential trip for Speaker Pelosi trip to Taiwan and the way China's pushing back, at least rhetoric-wise?
Well, I'm cheering her on. I think it would be a terrible mistake now to, in the face of this objection by the People's Republic of China, to back down. I was there with a number of my colleagues just about 6 months ago, and the mainland China didn't like us being there either. But this is consistent with our policies of Taiwan Relations Act, as it's called. I think it's 1978. And also, we know that China says they want to basically absorb Taiwan into their country, and they're going to do it by either peaceful or non-peaceful means. And I think we need to continue to show our support for that democracy over there and not back down in the face of those threats.
And the reality is the United States has not changed its one China policy at all. It looks like it's more of a domestic thing within China. Perhaps that's what some of the experts are saying, that it's domestically, that the President Xi wants to be able to show that he's pushing and it's more.
Well, they're on the march. And, you know, while we were focused post 9/11 on the Middle East and have been for a long time, Afghanistan, Iraq, and obviously because of the energy sources in the Middle East that were essential to our economy and national security, while China was rising. Right now, the current market value of U.S. investments in mainland China are $2.3 trillion. So it's American businesses investing in China which have helped it rise. And we hope that it will be a peaceful rise, but the problem is they want to dominate the world economically and militarily, and we've got to compete and we've got to win.
Let's talk about one of the Republicans' biggest talking points these days, and in fact, it's one of all of our talking points. We're talking about millions of Americans impacted by what's going on in the economy. The GDP fell 0.9% in second quarter, following 1.6 drop in the first. Experts say it's too soon to say it is a recession. They won't say it's a recession. But we know that prices are going up. Inflation is still there. What I want to talk with you about is, and employment rate is still very good, by the way. But let's talk about what Republicans want to do differently to reach a different scenario than what we're doing right now.
Well, again, post-COVID, we've seen the economy come roaring back, but one of the big constraints, well, there are two of them mainly. One is supply chains, we've talked about a little bit, and that's the reason if you want to go buy a car, you can't get one for about 6 months, probably minimum, or a washing machine or a new computer or whatever. But so that's one issue, and the other is the workforce issues. People aren't coming back necessarily like they did before COVID to the office or to the job. And so there are workforce limitations everywhere. That drives prices up, and that's fueling inflation, which is about 9% now, the highest in 40 years. But what also throws fuel on that fire is government spending. And we've seen, I think, an excess of spending by the federal government that some of it is necessary, but some of it is just completely gratuitous.
What would you change? What would you change in terms of the spending?
Well, for one thing, I think we would spend money on necessary, but not on unnecessary items. We've seen the administration try to do things unilaterally. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to see that again this next week, like they did when President Biden was elected. $1.9 trillion spending bill that they did strictly along party lines. When COVID hit, we worked together in a broad bipartisan way, almost unanimously, to spend what we had to, $5 trillion, to help not only come up with a vaccine and treatments, but also to help people who were in distress and out of work. And that still is a lingering problem, but I think that should not be an excuse to spend money that is not necessary. We know, we talked about China, we're going to have to invest more in our national security spending. And that's always a fight because our Democratic friends want to spend more money on domestic projects at the same time. So it's a battle.
So it's all about how much to spend. I know Democrats this week have been happy to talk about what's now called the Inflation Reduction Act, which used to be the Build Back Better Act.
Yeah.
It's going to be via reconciliation, I understand.
That's what it's called.
So what is, for the viewers, what is reconciliation and why are all Republicans against it?
Well, this is not an Inflation Reduction Act. That's an insult to the intelligence of the American people, in my opinion. What it is an opportunity to raise taxes and spend more money, again, on not necessary items that does help exacerbate or fuel inflation, which takes 9 cents out of every dollar of income that you and I and your listeners have. So reconciliation is something you can do with just a party line vote.
Right.
And that's why Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, the senator from West Virginia and Arizona, have been so important. So far, they had blocked the really big Build Back Better, they called it. I call it Build Back Broke. But now apparently Joe Manchin's cut a deal, and Senator Sinema has not yet declared her position. But this is something they're going to have to do if they do it at all with purely party line votes.
Well, they say that there's $300 billion in deficit reduction in this.
There's no deficit reduction because they're going to be spending it on other things like subsidies, so wealthy people can buy electric vehicles. People who make, let's say, $25,000 a year who can't afford to buy an $80,000 electric vehicle car are going to be paying their taxes to subsidize rich people for getting electric vehicles. There's something wrong with that.
Well, so what about their corporate minimum tax, which I understand that's going to be different. That's going to be a game changer in terms of how much corporate taxes are being paid.
Well, the strange idea is you can raise taxes on a business and it's not passed along to consumers, raising prices, putting pressure on inflation. So I think this is just another, they want to squeeze as much as they can because they want to spend as much as they can, and this is the way they choose to do it. But I think it is going to have a bad impact on inflation. It's going to hurt job growth. My Democratic colleagues seem to think that you can raise taxes on anybody and it just gets absorbed and not passed along. It's just not so.
You recently took a lot of heat from segments of your own party when you were leading negotiations to do something about gun control. Safer Communities Act, otherwise known as gun legislation. It's been held first major legislation since 1994. It came on the heels of Uvalde, which really highlighted some of those things. Yeah. Your determination to get that done, in spite of the pressure you were receiving from your own party. Talk about that.
Well, the president and everybody else said, do something. And I always said, well, what do you want us to do? And doing nothing is not an option. I mean, no parent should be afraid to send their child to school. No grandparent should be afraid for their grandchild to go to school. And a child shouldn't be afraid to be in school. And so we had to do something. I'm a proud gun owner. I love to hunt. I love the great outdoors. And I'm not a threat to public safety, but people with mental health problems, people who have criminal records who cannot legally possess or purchase firearms are a problem and have committed mass shootings. So what we tried to do is to find a way to not erode the rights of law-abiding citizens, but to expand access to mental health services and better communication between schools, which are really a sanctuary for kids.
Right.
Kids spend more time at school than they do, sometimes with their parents at home. And to do a better job of providing those services. You know, our mental health safety net in America is a scandal. Back in the 60s, it used to be people were institutionalized. Then we deinstitutionalized them and said, well, the safety net will catch them, and they're not catching them.
Right.
So you see the profile of these young shooters from Uvalde, Salvador Ramos, just like Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook, and others. It's a pretty familiar profile, and there's people, it's kids in mental health crisis, young males, who then act out, take their own life, and take other people's lives with them. 60% of gun deaths in America are suicides. So I would think we would want to help those people get help so they don't hurt themselves and hurt other people. That's what we did.
Well, on the backside of it, 90% of Americans think you could do more, and so maybe along the way that may happen. But good, congratulations for doing that. We got more with you. Thank you for sticking around after the break, including why Republicans who last month voted for a bill to help veterans voted against it last week, and his take, you know, you've heard it, and his take on the January 6 hearings that continue to paint a lot of not so flattering pictures of the former president. We'll talk about that after the break. And welcome back. Senator John Cornyn is my guest this morning. Prior to the break, I talked about a bill Republicans supported and now don't. It's called the PACT Act. And not too long ago, it was 84 senators voted for it last month, including you. And now last week, 25 Republicans, including you, voted no. Why?
Well, this bill will pass because it provides necessary health care assistance to our veterans who were exposed to dangerous burn pits and that unfortunately can produce everything from cancer to other respiratory problems. Really, it's just about a spending issue, and I know it sounds like small potatoes, but we were promised to have 2 amendments to that bill on the floor, and then Senator Schumer, Senator Tester, who negotiated that with Senator Moran, reneged. And so this is basically to try to get from mandatory spending to discretionary spending. Again, I'm sorry, it's down in the weeds, but I think by the end of next week, the bill will pass. Okay,
so veterans who are not really happy right now are going to be okay?
They'll be all right.
Okay. January 6th committee in the House have been making public findings about what's been going on before, leading up to January 6th. It is not painting a picture of happiness and good picture as far as the former president is concerned. More and more in your party are saying that he should not be considered as a candidate for president again. Do you feel that way?
Well, there's one person who's going to make that decision, and that's President Trump. I thought what happened on January the 6th, I was sitting there when the Secret Service pulled the vice president out, and we knew something was going on, and then we could hear people in the halls of the Congress marching in and unfortunately committing various acts of vandalism and crime. It was a very tense time, and I want to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. And I thought the president should have acted to ask the crowd to leave rather than encourage them on, because once you start something like that, you don't know how it will develop.
Do you think the Republican Party can afford another candidate, Trump?
Well, I support President Trump's policies. I thought his policies were good. We passed some historic Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We confirmed 230 federal judges. We did a lot of really good work. But unfortunately, I think the president had a unique way of undermining his own effectiveness by a lack of self-discipline and by doing things that, frankly, I wish he would not do.
Well, I'm going to take that as a maybe.
Well, I'm focused on 2022, and we'll see what happens in 2024. There's going to be a primary process.
Sure.
I think there'll be a lot of really good candidates in the Republican primary for president in 2024. He may or may not be the nominee.
Well, I look forward to having continuing conversation with you. We're going to have a new online Newsmakers Extra coming up. Thank you for your time this morning. We'll continue our conversation on the other side of this. In the meantime, stay safe and good luck as you continue to do the good work you do for the people of Texas.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you so much.